Welcome back to Dynamic Alignment Bodywork. I'm Liam and happy Friday. In today's video we're going to talk a little bit about tension. And tension, obviously a word we use a lot in our world, definitely in this culture, and kind of has become the fall guy for a lot of our pain symptoms and certainly in bodywork, right? That sort of like classic picture, someone walks into a massage therapist room and is like, I carry my tension here, I have a lot of tension. And the idea, or at least that story tells me, this idea of like I sort of accumulate it, like it comes from the outside in, and then I hold on to it for some reason, and then we can rub it away. And that story, in my experience, has a lot of truth to it. And that can certainly feel really good to release that. What I want to introduce or elaborate an idea of today is that tension in your body happens for a good reason. It might not be a reason that you like, and almost always it's kind of for an unseen reason. But we'll talk a little bit about why and how that happens, and then a little exercise you can do for a common example. So this common example. A way to release tension in your shoulders, but actually we'll do a little bit of work with your lower back, and we'll get to that in a couple minutes. But first, quickly, talking about tension, again, the idea that our bodies have a good reason for any tension that's there, a lot of times. And tension, things close together, it's a kind of protection mechanism, right? And or you could also think of physically as bracing. So if we think about tension-dependent structures, which is in a lot of ways what we are, less like a stack of bricks, right? That sort of like just stays there. We wouldn't have nearly the mobility and fluidity if we weren't more kind of a torsional, fluid-based, tension-based system. Here's a very crude example of that. The idea of tensegrity. So tension, in the integrity we have these compression members, so there's the soft, spongy stuff, and then the tension members. I actually don't remember which is which. I should for this video. But if I pull on one end of it, right, that strain gets distributed throughout the system. So these actually slide a little bit, but if they didn't, we could look at this as sort of the perfect tensegrity model, right? I twist somewhere, I put torsion, torque somewhere in the system, and it gets distributed throughout. So here, you could take this end of my shoulders, maybe in this lower down the line in my low back. Something starts to happen here, and a pull, and I can feel this in my hands, so you can't really see it. All of a sudden, that starts to put a lot of strain and demand up here as a really natural byproduct of when I'm standing. Let's say I start to really lose touch with my low back and hips. They start to lose some of their natural mobility and fluidity as I'm walking down the street, bending over, picking stuff up, right? This becomes more of a numb area to me for the myriad of reasons that could happen. All of a sudden, that mobility and that sort of bracing, if this is more offline, there's more of like, I need to like lift myself up from here and kind of hold a lot here. And I'm more aware of this area, and thus, it starts to become painful. But this lifting is really happening out of, or because of, a lost touchness, a lack of mobility and fluidity of really likely somewhere else. And this is a really common relationship that I see in my clinic, actually. That upper shoulders, neck tension can come a lot from hips and low back. And certainly vice versa, and other factors too. But so here's the experiment. Here's what we can try. 1, put down what you're doing, stand up, take a few minutes, or a few seconds, to, as best you can, feel into the position of your shoulders. We've talked a bit about interoception and proprioception, so you're feeling for the position and kind of internal sensation without doing anything about it. Just letting them hang. We're going to lie on our backs. If you have a spot to do this, I almost guarantee you have a spot to do this. You might look a little weird if you're in an office or something, so you can do this when you get home. But I am going to, so here's my belly button. I'm going to lay on my back, take a few breaths here, and I'm going to slowly just start to scoop my tail and start to gently push, and you can see how much I'm moving, right? It's not much at all. I'm pushing different parts of my lower back, even of that bony structure, especially of that bony structure, down in. And like if you were creating a map of the territory. So let's say, you're a cartographer going to a new land, right? You're sort of mapping out internally and externally your own lower back. Take whatever amount of effort you're using right now and cut it in half. So do even less. This is counterintuitive to a lot of what we try to do. So less doing and more listening. You're not going to fall asleep, but you're doing very little. You can see again how little I'm moving. And I'm just sort of smearing. If I were making bigger movements, I'm letting my hips drop, my tailbone tuck. Right, if this is you, we're in your sacrum and lumbar spine. We're like cruising around this area, like this, trying to get in between spaces. Again, this is no good as an intellectual exercise. You need to really be doing it. So you can always go back a minute if you haven't been. I'm also moving into my lumbar vertebra, those lowest vertebra. Here, creating that internal map of what the area is like. I'd say feel free to pause the video and do this for a minute or two more for the sake of expediency. When you're ready, and at least that long, come on up. Stand. Notice the feeling and position of not only your low back, but just for giggles, because it's this experiment. See if things upstream don't feel a little bit different. Not to lead the witness or say that you should feel better, but you certainly might. Notice the position of your shoulders and upper body as well as your low back. A lot of times that little bit of proprioceptive information into an area that's stuck or that's more offline can have really resounding effects on those areas that we feel like are holding tension all the time. I hope this helps. I'll see you in a week, and be well.